All right, everyone, welcome to the show. We've got Tim Aalders on. He's running for U.S. Congress. Now, you're challenging the congressional district. What district are you challenging?
District 3.
District 3. And where does that roundabout locate?
So it starts in Mill Creek, Cottonwood Heights, Sandy, Murray, Draper, east of State Street, goes into Utah County, east of I-15, all the way down to Monticello, Vernal, Roosevelt, Carbon, Emery County, Uintah County, Grand County, San Juan County.
Wow, it's got a pretty heavy strip right there and a lot of kind of city area also.
Yeah, a lot of rural, a lot of driving, but good people.
All right, good.
Good people, so.
Good.
So, Tim Aalders, please introduce yourself to the audience and let them know who you are.
So I'm the son of immigrants who immigrated here from Holland, first-generation American. They were both in German work camps, came over here after World War II, born and raised in Utah, former national talk radio host, author on the Constitution, known as Mr. Constitution on the radio, land investor, developer, and I raise Angus cattle down in North Weber County. So my motivation is very simple. Being on the radio, doing highlighting and shining the light on corruption of government for almost 2 decades now. I ran for office a few times just to bring the Constitution into the conversation. But I never had money to really challenge or make a sincere effort because, unfortunately, it takes money to win elections, It's a sad state of affair where we're at, but it is a true state. So I looked at a couple of the other candidates. I asked them what their strategy to win was, how much money they had. They had neither. I went home a little depressed. I ran against Curtis 2 years ago, did really well in what I called the COVID convention, lost by going into a primary by just a couple percentage points. So my wife said, well, we've been blessed. You have the money. Do a real run for once. Put all your money behind it and just try to win. So we did.
Now, are you backed by a political party at all, or are you just going all on your own?
Republican Party.
Okay.
I'm running on the Republican Party, but all the money is either friends in the district or mine.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, well, let's strike into your kind of political philosophies real quick. You're running on the Republican Party, and your political philosophy sounds
constitutional,
or rather libertarian.
I lean a little bit of both because technically the Constitution leans libertarian.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't lean liberal. Sorry, it leans libertarian. The Constitution, the founders of our nation felt that government shouldn't be involved in certain aspects of our lives. Libertarian wants the government to stay out of certain aspects of their lives, but Republicans have grown the size of government to where they think they need to be involved in all our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a constitutional twist. When I ran a few years ago against Mitt Romney, I actually united the Libertarian Constitution Party against the Rhino Romney. So.
Yeah, Romney seems to be a big government. I like to think of him as a turn-of-the-century Republican, but he's definitely a big government Republican. He's not that. I don't like to say I don't see the Republican Party as bulwarks for small government. I know they preach this every cycle, and I think you won't find small government people in the Democrat Party, and I don't think you've seen small government people successful in the Republican Party, but I do like the Republican message on that.
That's interesting that you brought that conversation up because that's what I've been highlighting for, almost 2 decades is the Republican Party always preaches about how bad government agencies are, yet it was Orrin Hatch from Utah who started the Department of Education. and many other agencies that intrude on liberty and freedom in today's world. So, when people say the Democrats have grown the size of government, they're either just ignoring the basic fact that Republicans have done it also.
Oh, very true. Extremely true. And it's sad to say they've always come in preaching the message because that's what their base truly wants. And again, I think it goes back to the money enabling you to run. It's
how close were you to defeating Romney, if at all?
Well, so Mike Kennedy was running against Romney on the Republican ticket. The Constitution Party has been friends with me for years because I always gave him a voice on the radio, approached me and said, listen, we like Mike Kennedy, but we need a conservative on the ballot in case Mike Kennedy doesn't get through. Will you allow us to put your name on as the real Republican? You don't have to change your affiliation. You can stay a Republican. File to run on the Constitution Party. So I ran as a Constitution Party with the full backing that if Mike Kennedy would have got through the primary, that I would have withdrew. But he didn't. So then I ran commercials on Fox saying exactly who Mitt Romney was. At that time, I probably spent $150,000 to $250,000 to put TV commercials on Fox exposing Romney for who he was.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel validated now?
It's a hard validation though, but I can't tell you how many people, even my mother-in-law, now tell me that everything I said about Romney was factual. It's a sad validation because it actually cost us liberty.
Right. It sucks to be right when we're talking about losing our freedoms.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, and that's but what I was going to say is this money and politics thing that we have. I think that's going to be an albatross around our neck whenever we're trying to. Well, the base, and this is on both parties. The base will never truly get someone that supports them as long as it's only moneyed interest, because that gives an inordinate voice to kind of the wealthy class, and with that voice they pay to dupe the working class. Not to sound too much like a socialist when I speak, but that's what it does, and it makes it so that you're going to vote for someone who has the catchier commercial when principles never shine through.
Is that really what you think of the audience, Jared?
What do you mean, think of the audience?
It's like flash and colors are what catches their eye rather than the actual message of freedom?
I would like to say no, but look who's in all the offices.
Right.
I would say that the proof is in the pudding.
The little tapioca balls.
Jared, let me say this. When you do a political radio show and you preach to the choir of conservatives who recognize that same fact you just said, they understand when Citizens United came around in 2010 by the Supreme Court that it put politics in a whole new spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And they recognize, but the problem is that's maybe 10 to 15% of the people that are awakened to the corruption of money. The uneducated voters are the people who watch CNN or Fox News or MSNBC, and they buy that 30-second commercial that a candidate runs, and they vote on name recognition. They'll drive into their neighborhood and say, well, that guy must be really good because he has 50-yard signs to that guy's one.
Yep.
So nobody supports him. And that's just and so that's what was so disheartening for me. My daughter had passed away a few years ago, and at that point I thought I was out of politics. And when I went and looked and nobody had any money, I'm like, I can't have been blessed with this money for no reason. And so when my wife said, give it your all finally, then I did. I went, filed, put money into my campaign, and I'm running a real campaign, a real effort to win this time.
I like it. I like it. And I read through your website, and all the messages there resonated with me deeply.
And if you resonate with Jared, it must mean something, because he's a pretty freedom orientated guy.
That's my only benchmark is liberty. That's it.
That should be for the Republican Party.
It should.
You know, and this is the issue I had with Curtis, and I had to run. He has voted to fund the National Defense Authorization Act twice. We have people being held from January 6th that had no charges filed, no due process. They found out that they went to Washington by spying on their Facebook, their Twitter, their Instagram. They haven't set trial dates for most of these people. And it's all because of Curtis's voting to fund something that violates the Fourth Amendment 100%. No question. It's just a direct violation, yet he's done it multiple times.
It is. It is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. There's
a lot of violations of the Fourth Amendment, isn't there? I mean,
there is, yeah.
It's almost like it's been trampled on to the point where it doesn't even really have validation.
Yeah, we've had some pretty big obnoxious violations of it. And I don't know, I would like to think that we have an answer over the horizon, but again, with the money in politics thing, and when Citizens United passed, it was the Democrats who screamed the loudest about it. And the Republicans sat on their heels, I think, because the Democrats screamed and they didn't look into it. Now, granted, I was politically moronic at the time. I didn't pay attention or any of that. I wish I would have, because by that being passed, nowadays it's the Democrat Party who carries the most benefit from it. And then, let's face it, corporations get a lot of benefit from having a large government that restricts competition into their markets and allows their guys to write the tax laws. And so by doing that, they pay to keep the big guys in there, and also to, they've got to do their lobbying, I guess, if you will, or glad handing, so that the government doesn't come after them again like they did to what was it, Hewlett Packard in the 80s and then started to do in the 90s with Microsoft. And every time the government came after him, that allowed a competing organization to roll in, which is how Apple kind of dominated the market just when the tax hearings started up. But I want to real quick.
Yeah.
You keep talking. I'm going to show your website on the screen right now, for everyone to see. And you keep talking.
The thing is, many delegates, a few of them have got sort of offended because I'm funding my own campaign. But John Curtis has won every primary because he could outspend his opponents. Chris Herod is a very, very good man, and stands pretty much similar to me on ideology. But he lost the primary in 2017 when he raised almost $250,000. Then the next year, no money came in from outside, and he only raised 20 and lost the primary. So I knew when I looked at Curtis's campaign funds that he had $600,000, that I had to at least match that. So far, we have, as a campaign, there's still over $600,000 in my campaign account, but the money just came from me. So nobody owns me, nobody controls me. This is me trying to do the right thing.
That's a lot on the chopping block, huh? Wow.
My wife and me have decided if we need to, we'd put $1.2 million into this.
Wow. Just the thought, I want Curtis out. I'm not going to lie. I mean, everything I've read about Curtis doesn't make me feel good. The warm fuzzies aren't there. The guy has a better stock rating than Nancy Pelosi, so you know something's going on under his hood. But let me ask you a question here. Do you see yourself as maybe a Freedom Caucus candidate if you win? Would that be something you might pursue?
So one of the things I did first off is I bought the website. It's called USAFirstCaucus.com. And I have been reaching out to the new 30 to 40 Republican Congress people who will be going back to Washington there for their first time to help support legislation that I've already drafted and created. One of those is single topic legislation, and the other is disallowing foreign nations or foreign people from purchasing our resource land, our farmland, our residential buildings in America, and gives them 2 years to sell back to American citizens or states. The reason I'm doing that is I want to put America first. The Freedom Caucus, there's nothing wrong with it, but if I joined it, I would want to be one of the leaders and the voices to turn people back to the Constitution. So it's not a bad place, but they haven't done the things that they've promised their constituents to do. And I want to go back there and remind them of that. I'm known because I've interviewed every member of Congress and Senate for 20 years on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that's well,
it's kind of hard to do what they say they're going to do, though, in the Freedom Caucus, because government will never let us have that amount of liberty, even if they sincerely wanted to give it to us.
That's why I tell people that I can't guarantee any outcome, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't try. And when I put forth single topic legislation, everybody in America hates omnibus bills.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go on a radio program or a TV in Texas and say, hey, everybody in this state hates omnibus bills, I put forward a bill to get rid of it, but your Congress people ain't supporting me. Why? Call them. I can start to wake people in America up to say, hey, that brand new guy from Utah is trying to do the things we want. We need to either urge our Congress people to get behind him or replace him.
I think that is.
I'm not guaranteeing results. I'm guaranteeing to be in the fight.
Yeah, I think the single item legislation, I would even put a line item in there, breaking the single item legislation. But I'd make it so that no legislation could be more than, say, I would put a limit of maybe 20 pages. And if it starts getting to where you're dragging out more than 20 pages, you need to break it down further. Because we keep seeing these bills like this descheduling marijuana bill that just got passed.
The MORE Act.
Yeah, the MORE Act. And that bill should have been, simplified. Well, they added in a bunch of other stuff having to do with, one, how do they continue to fund federal programs? And then how do you schedule people for release if they were convicted under previous laws? How do you schedule them, whether they're nonviolent or not? Which I understand that, but that should have been done, one, according to the 10th Amendment, state by state. All they should have done is says we're going to remove marijuana off our scheduling process federally, and that's it. And if they have people in federal prison for marijuana, then they need to boil down and look and see if they meet under any other criteria for incarceration. And if not, then they need to kick them back to their states. Let their states decide what they're going to do, and then let the 10th Amendment decide whether we're going to have a continued failed war on drugs or not.
The Schedule 1 drugs, I understand exactly where you're going, and leave it to the states. That's the most perfect outcome. But the federal government doesn't like to honor the 10th Amendment. Just flat out, they're opposed to giving states any power back.
Oh, yeah.
And that's Republicans and Democrats.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got an answer for that. Something I've been boiling over in my mind for a minute is that, and one thing I'm trying to push here is I want to see percentages of registered voters voting on the city level upwards of 70%, and voting on the county level, upwards of 60%, voting on the state level, upwards of, 60%. And then federal voting, I want to see percentages of registered voters down in the 30s. And that would send a message to Washington that states matter, counties matter, cities matter, and you don't. And I think that's one way that we could wrestle back a little modicum of control.
That would require a lot of...
Jared, I keep telling people when I meet with them that this isn't my campaign, it's yours. The way the Founding Fathers intended it is state delegates are elected for 2 years.
Yep.
I don't know why. I'm going to do it if I'm elected. I'm going to give all my state delegates login credentials. Since I'm a research nerd, I'm going to research every piece of legislation. I'm going to break down the pros, the cons, the constitutionality, and send out a group text to all the delegates and say, hey, the breakdown of the next 3 pieces of legislation are on my website. Please give me input on how I should cast your vote. Nobody does it the way it was intended to be. And I had one delegate tell me, well, we trust you with my vote. And I said, well, how's that been working out for you? If you take yourself out of the equation, you expect Washington to get better?
Yeah. That's a fact.
So, Tim, since you've been in this game so long, what have you already crafted some legislation that you would go right for if you win the election?
Yeah, one was the single topic legislation. It's going to be up on my website within the next couple days.
Mm-hmm.
The other is the no foreign purchase of U.S. land. There's other obscure laws that I know that could help us. Nobody's impeached a Supreme Court justice since 1805,
mm-hmm.
but one member of Congress can call a Supreme Court justice up for impeachment. And the Supreme Court's not supposed to make laws. Well, Roe versus Wade, Citizens United, they were actually rulings that created law. That's not the Supreme Court's purview. They're only allowed to serve under good and honorable terms. They're not. So, the oath of office. The oath of office in 7311, Section 5 of U.S. Code states that no politician can hold office if they promote any form of government over a constitutional republic. The penalty for that is 1 year, 1 day in prison, instant removal from office, and a fine. Yet, we have AOC, Bernie Sanders, all these people promoting socialism. We have Republicans and Democrats promoting democracy, which isn't in our Constitution. Mm-hmm. So people need to go back there. And mind you, I'm not going to call everybody up for impeachment. But I will stand on the floor and say, hey, Section 5 of USC Code 7311 is the oath of office. You've all seemed to forget your oath. Let me tell you what the penalties are for violating your oath. And let me show you some of the videos of AOC, of Bernie Sanders, of Mitt Romney calling us to promote democracy throughout the world.
Can I dream about
all violations?
Can I dream about all of them being thrown out for a minute, though?
Yeah, you can.
I just imagine a world where the federal government went away for a week. What would the prosperity in the United States look like after just 1 week?
I agree, but think of a congressperson calling them out and saying, listen, the people of District 3 are upset. We're willing to forgive as long as you don't do it again. If you do it again, the world's been put on notice through C-SPAN. We are putting this out through radio that we are aware that you're violating U.S. law. So either you believe you're above the law or you'll honor the law. Choice is yours. It's not argumentative. It's not name-calling. It's factual-based adult conversation.
Yeah. What do you think about those? We had, 2 more January 6th? I like to call them political prisoners released this week. They were found not guilty. Oh, well, I think they were all charges dropped and released after being held in jail for over a year. And then you've got the Whitmer kidnappers. 2 of those were acquitted this week. Only 2 left for them to charge. Of the 18 people, where 12 of them were FBI agents or informants. One guy pleaded guilty, took a plea deal to turn on the others. Immediately right after that, one of them got released. That left 4. Another 2 got acquitted. Now we're standing at acquitting another 2, and one guy that turned state's evidence on innocent people is going to be the only one that serves time. We're living in wild times. We're living in government overreach and debauchery times.
What is your official statement on
God
January
bless
6th?
America.
Yeah.
What is my official statement on that?
Yeah.
Well, John Curtis voted for the January 6th Inquisition. I was there on January 6th. I was on the steps of the Capitol. I had never seen a more peaceful march until it was infiltrated by Democrat insurgents.
Mm-hmm.
It bothers me that, and mind you, if you dislike Trump, I'm fine with that. But the fact of the matter is, where was your Inquisition into Seattle, into Portland, into Minnesota? If you're not going to be consistent and call out Nancy Pelosi, Barbara Boxer, Mitch McConnell for inciting riots that burned a police station and killed people and created billions of dollars of damage, you're no use to any American who loves freedom. So my statement is, I am glad that the court system recognized that they were innocent or not guilty. You know, they'll never say they're innocent if you're a Democrat. I'm glad that these 2 people were released, but there are still over 75 people being held on Washington, D.C. without due process thanks to my opponent.
Yep. And remember...
And Congress.
Yeah. Remember, Lego kits are now chalk diagrams for assaults. Some lady up in Alaska's house was raided. I mean, all the stuff that built up to this is, and we've been heading this way for a long time. After the Boston bombing, that stuff that happened in Watertown, is that the name of the town, where they were just forcing people in their houses while they went door to door and searched. You know, what was that? That was now that could only happen in Massachusetts, where they have strict gun laws. That wouldn't happen out here in Utah or Arizona or Wyoming or, you know, probably not even Nevada, Idaho, all those other, because the police aren't enough of them, and they aren't armed enough to pull something like that off in a Second Amendment region. But back there, that should have scared everyone.
Or in a constitutional sheriff region.
Yeah. Yeah. And that should have scared everyone, saying, wait a second, they can have an incident happen, and next thing you know, a whole city, 20,000 people are on lockdown with armed men going house to house, bringing violence to you on the notion of possibility that you might somehow have this bad guy in your basement.
With no due process,
None.
No, total violation of every aspect of our Constitution yet again.
Yep. But let's take a minute and run through your website real quick. We don't want to keep you all night, but I would like to run through your website and do this. Now, you obviously, Tim, you can't see this, but we're just going to kind of mention your headlines here, your notable,
The issues tab.
Yeah. So you said Tim for Congress, the Constitution, freedom, liberty. These aren't just words on a page. It is a basis of what allows America to be that shining city on a hill that Ronald Reagan talked about. It's why Republicans want to fight a woke liberal agenda that Democrats are trying to force on Americans everywhere. We back capitalism, a system that brought more people out of poverty in the history of our planet than anything else. Over the failed systems of socialism. Oh, I'm not a good reader, so sorry, guys. It's going to be confusing, but it's why having principled members of Congress who understand, believe, and will protect the underpinnings of our nation is so important, and why Utah needs Tim Aalders in Congress. And I agree with all that statement. I'm an unabashed capitalist. What do you think about this ESG stuff that seems to be coming out? We went to a county and some state delegate meeting, and ESG came up, and that was a real interesting talk. And it seemed like all of our delegates were pretty aware of it and extremely against it. Granted, we are in Tooele, which would be prime area for, hardcore kind of, I guess, constitutional republicanism. But
it's not just you. Everywhere I've toured in the state, they're aware of it. They're aware that the federal government is trying to utilize a digital currency. They're trying to make it so that they can pick and choose who the winners and losers are. Not the same opportunity for you to try and fail. They want to say, if you're unwilling to put solar on your roof, we won't give you bank loans. We'll put pressures on the bank and you won't get any money. If you don't adhere to our wishes, you will lose your businesses. Congress should have slapped this down on both sides with a heck no. And you see it on local levels as a discussion, but when was the last time anybody but Rand Paul mentioned this?
Yeah. Well, I think it needs to be managed by more than just Congress, because I don't see Congress as being an effective answer to this. I see this as corporations purchasing the smooth-brained college graduates. I don't know, purchasing their
It's an attack
loyalty
on Main Street USA by big corporations.
It is. It is. And I don't think Congress can tackle this. I think it needs to be tackled by the people saying to any corporation, this includes your bank. If you're getting ready to open up an account, find out if your bank, and that's the big point of sale, find out if your bank looks into any kind of ESG. And if it does, we need to run them out of business. We need to, and then go to the next corporation and the next one. If you're going to buy an internet service, there's some utilities you can't shop for, but an internet service in most places you can. And if that internet service provider goes ESG, pay $10 more and let them be run out of business for their actions.
And when you say digital currency, you're not referring to cryptocurrency. You're referring to a digital dollar. And I just want to make that specification clear to the audience.
Correct. The Federal Reserve and the federal government is talking now about replacing printed money with your cell phone.
Yeah.
With the Federal Reserve having access. I'm a guy who believes they spy too much. We've all been there. You mentioned that you're looking for a mattress, and every ad on your phone on every app brings up a mattress because somebody's listening. Siri, Google, whatever it is. And the fact of the matter is, they have bankrupted the paper money system because nothing backs it up. So now they want to go to a digital currency, and it's every dystopian movie you've ever heard, to where, do you have enough credits to buy your food on your phone uploaded from the government or not?
Or do they allow you to use it? Do they get mad at you and say you can't use your Fed app for the next 2 days? Like Dave spends, 99.8% of his time in Facebook jail. Imagine if we gave those people the opportunity to control whether Dave can spend his currency.
I'd lose weight.
We've already gone to a digital currency. Let's face it, the cash in your pockets is, but one, it's a tiny decimal of a percentage of the currency in circulation, because the currency now moves across computer and telephone wires. But I think what they want to do is they want to move you to an app that gives them the on-off switch. And then what? Then
100%. I'm not. You just said it. I didn't need to.
Yeah, and we're heading that way. But let's go back to the website. I read through it and I really liked what you had written down here at the bottom. Okay, healthcare. Since the passage of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, working people have witnessed their premiums climb. We need to stop allowing HMOs to operate without competition, which would drive prices lower. America cannot afford to provide health care for people residing in our country illegally. Hardworking Americans should not have to subsidize their health care. Now, and I agree. And this is a double-headed mark. You got the Affordable Care Act, and you also got the HMOs, which came in the, when was that, 1970 under Nixon. The first showing of,
Correct.
so both parties come in and smacked you at the same time. Well, not the same time. One hit you, 40 years later, but they are both, the HMOs where they figured out how to allow streamlining of healthcare for the benefit of mostly insurance providers. And then Obama allowed those same insurance providers to write the legislation to dictate how you have to have healthcare.
Well, and it's even worse than that, Jared, because when HMOs came around, they carved up the country.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever noticed that in Utah, IHC is the biggest? There's a
Yep.
couple others, but IHC is the biggest. You go into Idaho, some of these others, IHC is there. Then you go somewhere else and Blue Cross Blue Shield is. They don't actively compete against each other like true capitalism. They've created a monopoly. They're working together to corner the system and to drive prices up. The free market's intended that anybody who wants to make an HMO or anybody who wants to put some kind of private insurance can. But they now own the hospitals, the insurance, and they've carved up the country into blocks of where they operate so that you can't find competitive rates. And the people paying the price are you and I and the other listeners and people out there who are legal to this country, because if you're an illegal and you walk into an emergency room, they have to treat you.
Mm-hmm.
And we pay for that treatment in our overpriced bills. It's just fact. And monopolies are illegal under our state law, federal law, yet they've allowed that monopoly to happen. Look at Ma Bell. When people got mad at Ma Bell, they broke it down. T-Mobile came about, Verizon. Now you can get competitive cell phone service, but you can't get competitive health care because nobody's breaking up that monopoly.
How does John Curtis feel about that?
Not going to Gary Curtis.
How does John Curtis feel about this?
Oh, John Curtis. Okay,
Yeah.
He said Jerry. I don't know what John thinks on healthcare
I don't
or
know if
any
he-
of that because he has government insurance, so he doesn't have to pay for his own.
I don't. Yeah, it's probably not even on his radar. Yeah, I doubt it's on his radar.
It's been on my radar since I did a 2-week special on Obamacare back in 2010.
And when you look into it, I mean, you've got to go back to, and I preached this on the show before. People listening to this are probably like, God, move on. But you've got to go back to the time of the Great Depression and FDR when he put price control or, wage controls on people. So businesses started offering healthcare, and that is the beginning of the end for our free market healthcare system.
Currently,
Correct.
we cannot buy prescription drugs from Canada or Mexico and have them shipped to our house. Is that correct, Tim?
Well, legally, you can. I mean, there's a lot of internet places that will help you, but they protect Big Pharma. Big Pharma will sell their products in every third world country, Canada, Europe, for 1/100th of the cost of what they do. So Americans are subsidizing the world with prescription drugs.
And invention.
Big Pharma doesn't want us to legally purchase from Canada or Mexico or anywhere else because their profit center is America. That's why they fund so heavily politicians on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, and let's look at the last 2 years. Big Pharma has done us good. They have really,
But they say they do that for our safety, though.
it's for us.
You know, the interesting thing about this whole vaccine mandate and everything is for 10 years, Democrats and Republicans alike told us not to trust Pfizer. They had been indicted by the federal government over 100,000 times. They had been found guilty of killing children in studies, falsifying studies. $10 billion 2 years ago in a payout for killing children in a falsified study in an African nation. Yet all of a sudden they're the most integrity carrying company and we should all buy their product. because politicians got a massive kickback and the government guaranteed them money, and now we made them $56 billion in a drug that they have no liability for.
Yep.
They have no responsibility for it, and nobody knows what's in it, and they went to block the FDA from releasing any of their studies, information for 75 years when our generation's long dead.
Yep. Well, I would argue that probably what happened, this might just be conjecture, is that Pfizer went and bought off 52% of our politicians and 100% of our
You're
beer.
giving a lower number than me.
Yeah, but that's all they have to buy off. They just have to buy off enough so that
The majority vote.
yeah, the majority vote, and then they have to buy off the bureaucracies because we know that's who really runs our nation.
So Pfizer did tests on African babies before they came over to Americans.
Well,
correct?
it's on a totally different drug they did the tests on, but
It was on a kidney
Yeah.
pill, but they've been found guilty of falsifying trials. And when the FDA told them they had to end the trial, they went to another country and were giving the drugs to children and killed them. And they were brought up in front of the World Court, our own Department of Justice, found guilty, of course, paid their way out of it with over $10 billion.
yep, bought their way out, and then said, instead of paying that to another instance where we may have to pay it to the people we hurt, let's pay it ahead of time to politicians. And I would argue they paid it ahead of time to politicians the world over. I mean, the World Health Organization was bought off. They were carrying Europe until about 6 months ago, and then Europe dropped them, and that's just Pfizer, not to mention all the other companies that were allowed to play in this market.
It's pretty creepy.
Ask yourself one simple question. Why doesn't the FDA do independent trials and studies? Why do they allow the corporation who's trying to pass the drug to do their studies and turn in whatever documentation they want?
Because the FDA gets paid either way. Because Upton Sinclair...
Well, the FDA is funded by Pfizer and Big Pharma,
Well, yeah.
over 47% of their budget.
Yeah, well, and not just that, but Upton Sinclair wrote that damn book, and next thing you know, they shouldered the cost of product safety onto us, and then don't hold it accountable afterwards.
Correct.
And that's what that's where we went. All right, back to the website.
Border and immigration.
Yes.
Let me read this one out loud for you, Jared. As the son of immigrants, I am grateful that America welcomed my parents to be part of this great country. And it is a great country, I will say. My parents wasted no time in getting jobs to ensure they would not be burdened on other Americans. And that used to be the way it was when immigrants come to this country. They don't want to speak their language. They want to speak English. I remember my dad telling me a story about an Italian guy in GE. He came over, he was learning English, and GE tried to give him his paycheck. He wouldn't take it. He's like, I have to learn the job first. I have to acquire the skill, because in his country, these guys are, they don't get paid until they know their skill. So GE put it into an account, and eventually the guy felt he deserved it and took the money. But yeah, I guess he waited for quite some sum of money to build up there before he would allow himself to take that.
You know what? Hey, I would be all for open borders. We just have to do it like it used to be. We offer no services. You can come on over, shoot your shot, and some companies might hire you if you're a fresh immigrant, and that'd probably be more of the lower end jobs. But we don't offer any services. This is give me your meek and your mild and your indigent, whatever, yearning to live free. And that's what freedom is. Freedom is dangerous. Freedom is taking a chance. Freedom isn't going over there and getting carried by the rest of the nation for 5 or 6 or 10 years while you get your feet out from under you, or get your feet under you and get ready. It's dangerous freedom. So, and
My parents had to have a sponsor that guaranteed that they would not be a burden on any entitlement programs, any church welfare, any corporate welfare, that if they lost their job, that sponsor would take care of them. And it was for a certain period of time that my parents had to have a written sponsor on their green card to live in America.
I like it.
Figure out any system you want to do it, but don't push that burden onto the rest of the populace. I'm just pretty blatant like that. I think you can't have open borders and a welfare state. You can't combine the two. You got to choose one or the other.
No, because if you've ever been to the border, I went there with the border sheriffs and border patrol. On the other side of the border in Mexico, they teach people how to utilize our entitlement systems in America to fund and send back to their families in Mexico. They teach them how to steal IDs. They teach them how to get free energy. They teach them how to get subsidized housing. They teach them how to get WIC and welfare and food stamps. They teach them all of this and then send them across the border. If we remove those entitlements, 3/4 of the illegals in our nation would self-deport because they wouldn't have anything that they came here for.
Yeah, and that's what we need to do. I think we need it. All right, education should be locally controlled issue. Utah parents and educators know what's best for our children. I oppose the progressives in Washington and their liberal special interest groups deciding what is best for our children. That's just cut and dry. Education should be ran on the local level. Well, the one thing is, I promise you, these Congress people sending their kids to private schools aren't fettered with the same poor education that the public schools are getting. And our education system seems to be prioritizing activism over academics. And
socialism over a republic.
Yeah. That's where, 100%. Okay, military. The first charge of the Constitution is to provide for the national defense, and I take that responsibility seriously. I know the United States must be strong enough to prevent countries like Russia, China, and North Korea from pushing us and our allies around. Now that one, I have a more...
As a libertarian, you disagree with.
Well, I have a more complicated issue with that. I want to see nothing but National Guard, voluntary National Guard, and let the coastal states, if they want to, their National Guard can be the Navy. We can absorb all responsibilities like that. I tend to fall back on John Quincy Adams' ideas of foreign entanglements. I don't think we need to be involved. I don't think that it's under our purview. That kicked off the end of America, the end of the scary liberty-minded republic once we started heading down those routes. First in the late 1800s, early 1900s, with our foreign entanglements to make sure that corporations are prosperous and destroying Central American countries at the same time. And I think the jury's still out on the argument whether that is why we see a lot of socialism coming out of Central America, because essentially these are countries that were built socialist by us through our Marine Corps. And then also, I don't see any value to us, say this entanglement with Ukraine and Russia. They're both, let's just face it, they're both outhouses. Where do you pick a good guy, or where do you pick your best house in a row of outhouses, Ukraine has been committing violations for the last 10 years against its eastern people. Russia commits a violation for the last 30 years. Where do we find the good guy in that? So I just don't see value to that. I just see an expenditure of our tax dollars leaving here to go up in a cloud of fire and smoke. And then again, our corporate class benefits from this. Lockheed Martin and all them, they just continue to benefit. I'd rather see Lockheed Martin build cars.
Okay, can I let me just say
Yeah.
something that I agree with you constitutionally that we weren't supposed to have a standing army. The problem with where we are at today compared to where we were at during the founders' intention is we have armed the world against us.
Mm-hmm.
We have given terrorists $80 billion in drone technology, Javelin missiles, Stinger missiles. We've dropped grenades and rocket launchers into the hands of 5 to 12-year-old kids throughout the Middle East who hate America. So unless D.C. versus Heller that ruled that every American citizen should be able to have the same type of technology and weaponry that is utilized in the world at that time, we have to have some kind of strength because we have armed the world against the United States. We created the nukes. We made nukes go everywhere. We created, the biggest bombs. And then we give them away. We sell them. We trade them. We hand them out through Europe. In a perfect intention, because you look at the military-industrial complex, and you have to look at them as probably one of the smartest corporate entities there ever was. Because if you don't eat a hamburger the next day, I'm not selling any more hamburgers, and I can't sell my Angus steers because nobody's eating meat. Well, they realize that if people don't use the Stingers, if they don't use the Javelins, if they don't use the ammunition, the grenades, they can't replace what was used. So our military leaves $80 billion behind, so they get new contracts, and people like Curtis can buy Raytheon and General Dynamics and then award the contract to make millions of dollars to build a 17,000 square foot home in Provo. It's just the insanity of it. So how do we disarm the rest of the world to go back there? They have purposely led us into a position where we need a standing army right now, or we need to follow D.C. versus Heller on the Second Amendment, which we'll get to later.
I don't think that if we continue down the path we've been on, that we'll get different results. And that's where, I'm 100%. I think if you can afford to buy a nuclear sub, more power to you. I'm a absolutist. But I don't think even in this current ideal that we can, maybe my collapsitarian side's like, yeah, let's just keep doing it because it's going to ruin our international value. It's going to destroy our money ever further. And then China's going to reign ahead. And then eventually, the one thing I don't think China or Russia will ever invade mainland U.S. And I think it's a far cry to see them invade any of our outside territories such as Alaska or Hawaii. But if China...
Let's look at, you brought up the Ukraine. The United States were responsible for the invasion of Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
If we would have honored our word that Reagan and Thatcher did and not invite the Ukraine into NATO, an anti-Russian organization, then Putin wouldn't feel that he had to take back the Soviet bloc because Gorbachev allowed the Soviets to split up based on Reagan's, America's, Thatcher's, and England's promise that they wouldn't do that. And Obama and Biden could care less and did it.
Well, it was
when
Clinton.
Obama started, that's when Crimea happened. And then Trump got in, pulled us out of NATO. It all stopped. And then Biden put us back in. Kamala Harris went there and invited him back into NATO, and Putin attacked.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got to go all the way back to Clinton. What Clinton did. All the promises made under Reagan were essentially busted right under Clinton. And the only reason Russia didn't invade anyone then was because Russia was still on its knees. And then the minute they get on their feet, bam, they're in Georgia. Bam, they're and that's just their physical presence. Let's talk about their financial and economic presence that they've been building up over the last, 30 years.
And somehow this is going to all benefit the oligarchical class of America, I'm sure.
Every time. But yeah, so that's just my argument there. I would like to see, I think we could even maintain a standing army on a National Guard militia footing if people wanted to not allow the average citizen to own a Stinger missile. Me personally, I'd like to have a Stinger missile right above the mantle. I think that'd be the sexiest thing you ever saw.
Well, that's a good segue into the Second Amendment. You
Yeah.
know, so I know that you're privy to that one particular Facebook group for the delegates, Tim. And you might have seen the poll in there that I made. Some people might have thought it was a silly poll, but it was serious. I was serious about this. And in that poll, it asks a question. Should Americans be allowed to have anti-tank weapons and munitions as they are assault rifles? So I wanted to ask you that question, Tim. Do you see any reason why we should prohibit those kind of weapons for Americans, since we're just dropping them off in pallets for 12-year-old African boys and
I like the
girls?
idea of an ATF Javelin tax stamp.
You know, the fact of the matter is, you look at Ukraine and why people need it against tyranny.
Yep.
You look at the fact of the matter that the Constitution, the Second Amendment, is not for hunting. It's to protect us against a tyrannical government. D.C. versus Heller was very specific that it's an individual right, not a national group think. That it was individual to protect us from government. It clarified it 100% and also clarified that there should be no infringement on the Second Amendment. Yet no politician has utilized that to remove all the gun laws that infringe on us, the assault weapons ban. You know, this country would have been lost in 1812 if it wasn't for pirates, bar owners, prostitutes, and people who had cannons in their own yards, cannons on their own ships, that went to Andrew Jackson's salvation in New Orleans. We would have lost America at that time.
Yep.
It was the weapons of the day, the cannons that individuals have. I can't even have a cannon today. That's functional.
Yeah, that's functional, you know. But no, that is true.
So I'm going to say that you would be completely okay with the fact that I would have a Javelin missile launcher in my basement if I could acquire one.
Above the mantle. Not in
funds.
the basement. You can't get to it quick enough. You need it above the mantle.
I would ask you to take me out to the West Desert and go jackrabbit hunting with it.
Just
I
imagine
like this guy.
dropping
I
out
like
of,
him.
dropping out of 60 feet up on the jackrabbit.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, Tim brought up an awesome point. The letter of marque, the fact that we could privatize our own military experiences and deliver them to the enemy ourselves. That was a big benefit that won us our freedom back then.
Well, and it also won us our freedom overseas because Jefferson may have built a navy, but it was a merchant marine navy that went to the Barbary Coast.
It was privateers and pirates.
Yep. They're pirates when they're bad guys, privateers when they're ours.
When they work for the government or the king.
Yeah. They got letters of marque. All right. Last thing, pro-life. Our
100%.
Our Declaration of Independence highlights the value of every life. We have a sacred duty to protect every life, especially the innocent and unborn. I strongly support the repeal of Roe versus Wade. And I don't think that needs any
Interpretation from Jared?
Yeah, that's no. I am completely pro-life, but I'm also libertarian. So I run to the side of, don't make me a party of it. Don't make me pay for it. Don't let me hear about it. Don't, and I just don't want to know. You know, make it so you enter that building in the back. I don't want to hear about it. I definitely
Don't want
to pay for it. Because I am pro-life.
You know, the thing is, I was interviewing a Democrat, Barbara Boxer, and a pro-abortion person with this little pro-life person from Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to stay out of it and moderate until the pro-abortion lady said, listen, when you are under financial constraints, when you are emotionally hurt because the children is causing you emotional grief, even if the child's born, you should be able to kill it. I said, wait. I said, wait. So I said, my 16-year-old is an emotional burden on it drains me all the time because I didn't know where she was, what guy she's out with. A financial drain, man, no financial drain over more than a teenager. So what age range am I legally allowed to kill that kid at then? Because until they're 18 and an adult, and she goes, well, you put words in my mouth. And I said, no, let me play it back. You said if they're a financial strain, an emotional burden, they cause you stress, that you should be able to kill that baby once it's even born. So where's the age cutoff? 5, 7, 12, 16?
Gosh.
You know, if it's a life and it's born, but it's such a financial burden we can get rid of it. I have friends that are a financial burden. They're not my kid, but can I get rid of them?
Yeah.
It's just Democrats and pro-abortion people don't use logical or critical thinking, and it terrifies me.
Could you imagine if every teenager came with a delete button? My God. We would be population issues right now, I'm sure.
Yeah, Saturdays would be a bloodbath. But no, the abortion issue is, look, I'm going to take them at they mean well. They mean to not burden the underclass with a child and the horrible things that come with that. But again, to me, being a libertarian means shouldering responsibility. Means if I make a mistake, I made that mistake and I've got to deal with it. And I don't believe the destruction of innocence for my mistake should be there. And then everyone's going to argue and run to the fences of, well, you know, what about rape and what about incest? Well, they do happen, but they're so rare. They're less than 1% of the instances of abortion. So I would rather we figure out how to instill in people that sense of, if I'm going to be drinking that night, I don't drive, because I see the future and I see, hey, tonight I plan on getting sideways, so I'm not driving there. I'm going to find a different way. I'm going to find a designated driver. I'm going to find the number for a taxi cab, whatever else. And I think you need to treat instances where you may make a human life the same way. And, I may make a human life tonight, so I'm going to put a condom in my pocket, or I'm going to,
have an Uber baby app.
I'm going to have the different, I'm going to have a plan in place so that I don't take this chance, so that I don't have to be a party to what I personally consider an atrocity. And
you want to err on the side of life.
Yeah, and that's just how and even then, I still believe that I made the mistake. Something else shouldn't have to pay for it. Someone else shouldn't have to pay for that mistake. And I believe that abortion is shouldering your mistake on the most innocent. And that's just,
I agree.
It's just my personal thoughts on it. And so I don't want to take away anyone's right for it. Just don't make me a party to it. And that's as simple as that. I don't think that we should be funding Planned Parenthood out of the government coffers
At all.
I think that, all those wealthy celebrities that want to fund it, I imagine they could probably toss, a tithing worth of money, 10% of their monthly income in there, and Planned Parenthood, one, they would have better structures and they would be in better areas because they would, it would be honest funding and not corrupt funding through theft.
And I'm going to say this, you would find parents with money that would pay for that child to live and adopt it.
Yep.
Because there is such a shortage in the adoption there.
Well, I think the shortage
women don't want to get fat. They don't want to have scars.
Mm-hmm.
The shortage in adoption is the fact that it's $40,000 to adopt a kid.
Yeah, you've got to go through the government to adopt as well.
And it shouldn't be government regulated on that either. I get it.
Yep.
So.
Yep, I agree.
All right, guys, any other questions? I have an event I got to get to.
Tim, it's been wonderful chatting with you. I like what you're saying. I do.
You're a good guy. I love it.
Even things I disagree with, I still like better than the alternative we're given.
The thing is, what is missing in Washington is the ability to have adult conversations and agree to disagree. As a conservative, you can't go back there, yell, scream, kick over the thing, threaten to burn down the house like Democrats do. You're better off arguing with somebody with a different opinion by keeping your voice calm and saying, okay, well, we're getting away from the facts. Let's get back to the facts. Explain to me why.
I agree.
And that is lacking in society today.
I completely agree.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Good luck on your race. Anytime you need to come on, make an announcement, just reach out to us. We'll get you on.
We want to hear back
All
from
right,
you.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that. You folks have a nice day.
You too. And we will we'll talk to you soon. Everyone, Tim Aalders, go to votetimaalders.com. He's running for Congress, coming from the state of Utah.